Hello and welcome to Hexed Encountered. I'm Joe. In this video, we will be taking a first look at the 25th anniversary edition of the Mark Herman Classic for the People. This is published by GMT Games. As you can see, it's got new box art. It also has a 3-inch box, which is pretty nice. And we'll see all the new stuff that's inside here when we open up the box. But first, we'll do our usual and take a look at the back. So it does have a complexity level of 5, so right in the middle. And solitaire suitability is a 6. So obviously 25th anniversary, as I mentioned, this is kind of a classic game, been around obviously for 25 years. This one has, got a new map. I know that. And, here's the description. For the People pioneered card-driven gaming 25 years ago, and it still stands out today among what is now a crowded field of games using the CDG mechanism. Its simple combat system combined with dynamic gameplay have kept this game fresh and replayable over the decades. This newest printing will allow another generation of players to take up the reins of power and attempt to favorably sway the course of events in the titanic struggle that threatened to divide the nation in its early years. So obviously, this is a Civil War game, and it's a grand strategy game. So you have basically the entire, eastern 2/3 of the United States or so-ish, right? Here you can see the map. It is, as we just heard, a CDG game, card-driven. So if you've played any of the other Mark Herman card-driven games, some of the mechanics from those were basically kind of derived from this one. So you can see you've got obviously the opportunity to play a card for its event or for its value event, and you have colors that determine which side can use it. We have a blue 2 here, so that would be a Union card. This one has a 1 that is both gray and blue, which means it could be used by either side. So what do we have in the box? We have 420 full-color die-cut counters, a double-sided 22 by 34-inch mounted map with new artwork from Terry Leeds on the front and the classic map from Mark Simonich on the back, 130 strategy cards, 1 strategy card reference, 48 player rule and scenario booklet, 2 player aid cards, and 2 6-sided dice. See some counter samples here. We have a unit scale of 6,000 men per strength point. The map scale is a point-to-point system. You can kind of tell that here. And if you've played, say, Washington's War, for example, which started off as We the People, then you would be familiar with this particular setup. It's also been used in like Wilderness War from Volko-Runka and so on and so forth, right? So age 14 and up, 1 or 2 players. So now let me open up the box and we'll take a look at what's inside. Okay, let's pull the box top off. Here we have our rules of play. 48 pages long, as we heard on the back of the box. So I probably won't go through all of this. It's a pretty standard rule book. Mark Herman's been making games for a long time, and he knows how to do a rule book. So uses the case system, of course, and extensive example of play right at the front. That covers the entire 1861 scenario, so that's really, really good. You can see that takes up several pages through page 10. And then you've got setting up the game, choosing your scenario, the setups for both the Confederacy and the Union, markers, border states, your course of play, the various phases, reinforcements, dealing strategy cards, the strategy rounds, the political control phase, then a description of your strategy cards, how land operations work, corps, divisional moves, cavalry brigades, lots of illustrated examples, as always, generals, movement into enemy spaces, interception, rail movement. And then we have combined operations, so this would be naval related as well. You've got naval movement and riverine ports and riverine movement, running guns, amphibious assault, Union naval combat, Confederate ironclads, torpedoes, and the Hunley, the famous submarine, forts, and then battles with retreat before battle. That's a kind of a thing that's been in several games. Battle ratings, battle resolution, retreat, casualties to generals. So generals can, of course, be killed. Battle casualties, logistics, including your out of supply effects, lines of communication, so on and so forth. The Shenandoah Valley attrition, reinforcements, including things like running the blockade, bringing generals into play, political warfare, challenging political control due to occupation, the national capitals, strategic will. So morale, of course, was a big thing in the war. And you have state control, Confederate resources, the blockade, capitals, the Mississippi River, Union War weariness, and Confederate war guilt. Then our scenario list. So you have the 1861 and 62, 63, 64, and the campaign game. Then you have some notes of an optional variant for railroad logistics. The operations queue, also an optional rule. And then we have design notes for both the original game. So this was the third game based on the We the People system. So We the People was the first game. We the People is now known as Washington's War. So that's the rule book. Then we have our player aid cards. They are double-sided. As you can see, you got a sequence of play on this one. State control value, strategic will summary on the back. We have the CRT, movement summary, reinforcements for both sides, running guns, casualties, river codes, and your die roll modifiers. Strategy card list. So this is a list of every card in the game. On the back, we have a scenario quick setup display for the 1861, aka campaign scenario, and our counter sheets. So you have plenty of markers here for control, two-sided. So we have Union side and Confederate side. You have state control markers, I guess it looks like here. And then you have some destroyed markers and some no railway markers. And, whoops. Counters punch out real easy, apparently. So here are our unit markers and some of the generals. You can see the generals in here are the usual suspects. If you're familiar with the Civil War, of course, we have McDowell. There's McClellan. We have Grant and Sheridan and Sherman on the Union side, as well as, a whole bunch of other people. P.T. Beauregard, Jeb Stuart, Stonewall Jackson, and of course, where is he? He's got to be here. Where is he? I'm not seeing him. There's Longstreet. There he is. R.E. Lee, Robert E. Lee. Stonewall Brigade, Hood's Texans. We've got the markers for the ironclads and the Hunley, some torpedo markers, and some fortifications and so forth. So now, here is what most people are probably anxious to see. This is the map. So we'll look at the cards in a moment, but this is the map. This is, I believe, the new map on this side. So let's open it up. Now, rather than futz around with the camera, we'll just kind of move around and look at it, but not see it all in total. So obviously, this is the northwestern corner. So this is Missouri. So you have basically Missouri, Arkansas, and the eastern part of Texas and east is what's covered by the map. This is, I believe, the new map, the Terry Leeds map, and it's very nice. We've got color codes for all the boxes based on who controlled that, which side they were on at the start of the war. You can see Kentucky, West Virginia, and Missouri are like a buff or a tan color, they are neutral. And then, of course, we have our Union stuff up near the top. It doesn't go particularly far north, which would make sense. Not much combat took part north of southern Pennsylvania, as you know, if you know your Civil War history. And yeah, so you have each state is marked, including West Virginia, which became West Virginia in the middle of the war. Before that, it was just Virginia. And then down south all the way to Alabama and the Gulf. And you have, Louisiana, Forts St. Philip and Jackson, New Orleans down here. There's boxes for the railway. I know you can't quite see everything. I'm sorry. Here's Texas. You've got your Army boxes here along the side. So for the Confederacy, we have the Army of Northern Virginia, Army of Tennessee, Army of Mississippi, Army of the West. For the Union, you have the Army of the Potomac, Army of the Tennessee, Army of the Cumberland, and Army of the Missouri. And you have various charts and tracks here on the borders. So let me slide this over a little bit so you can see the eastern side, which was, of course, the main theater of war. So here all the way at the top, you've got, of course, Gettysburg is right here, Washington and Richmond. You got your two capitals. You've got all these places in Virginia. Obviously, there were many fights there. We've got a counter that slid onto the map. And as I mentioned, you've got a map key over here, and you've got some various tracks and so on for like 1861, 62, 63, and 64. There's one for spring of 1865, because obviously that is when the war ended. So this is a look at the new map, and if we flip it over, we get the classic Mark Simonich map. So it's nice, a double-sided map, so you can play the original version and the new version. So this one is a little bit more kind of topographical in a way. It's got you've got your mountain range here from the Appalachians and so on, and obviously it's the same in general. Functionally, they're identical. It's really just an aesthetic thing. Which one do you prefer? Okay, so what else is in the box? Baggies. GMT is always pretty good about providing you some baggies to hold your stuff in if you wish to do so. 2 dice, 2d6, 1 blue, 1 gray, for obvious reasons. Then a whole bucket load of cards here. So you've got various cards. They all, I guess these are Union cards and these are Confederate cards. There are some that are for both sides. I'm not going to open them up right now. I'm going to do a gameplay video on this and we'll see the cards then. I'm sure other people have done, unboxing first look videos. They will undoubtedly, and this is not a new game. If you want to see the cards, there are ways to see the cards. This game's been around for a while. But you do have here, this is a fairly representative card. It's worth 3. It's blue. So you can play this as a Union. You could play this for the event. If you were the Confederate player and you had this card, you could only play it for its value. But this is General Scott, who was General-in-Chief of the U.S. Army at the start of the war, and who was the man behind the Anaconda Plan, which, if you aren't familiar with it, was basically the blockade of the Confederacy by the Union Navy. So we have that, and then you have empty haversacks. And this is a 1 value card. On the Confederate side, you've got Chickamauga, 3 value, only playable by the Confederacy. And you can see the Confederate, this would allow you to move 5 strength points using strategic movement via rail connections only to the same space with a Confederate general who's then activated normally and must attempt to enter a space with at least 1 or more Union strength points or fort. If a general casualty occurs in a battle caused by this card, the commanding general, is eligible. This is an exception to the rules, and then you have a reference to Rule 4.5. And we have here another one, which is a 2-point value, also only for the Confederacy. And the Confederates, Governor Isham Harris, Tennessee Confederate, Confederate immediately places 2 strength points in any friendly controlled space in Tennessee with a line of communication. Both strength points are placed in the same space. The strength points cannot be placed in a pro-Union space or one occupied by Union strength points or a fort. So you can see that, again, if you've played this, this type of game before, not this particular one, it's going to be very familiar, especially if you've played Washington's War, or as it was originally known, We the People. But that's going to do it for my look at the game For the People. So look for the gameplay video on this one that will be coming along probably in a few weeks. I've got a bit of a backlog I'm still trying to work through, but I did want to get a video on this game. I was very excited to get it. I backed this on P500 a while ago and was happy to get it. And I do have some other games that are kind of holding in a holding pattern, let's say, for their gameplay video. So that's going to do it for our first look at For the People, designed by Mark Herman, published by GMT Games. This is the 25th anniversary edition. Please feel free to comment, ask questions, etc. Also, if you would consider liking, sharing, and or subscribing, that kind of support is, of course, always welcome and appreciated. But that will do it. My name's Joe. This is the Hexed Encounter channel. And until next time, as always, happy gaming.